Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about a couple of unknown indicators that I haven't really heard anybody discussing, but that could be key indicators in determining critical points in HEX's history in regards to the price, of course. So stick around till the end because I don't think anybody's really ever shown this data before, and it was only due to the goodwill of Firebund that I was able to obtain some of this staker app data from the back end, which hopefully will be revealed to the public at some point in the future. But for now, it's kind of limited to either their servers or those who have the technical know-how to scrape direct blockchain data. So this is direct blockchain data that really can't be faked, and it's undeniable, okay? So there's no way that this data can be skewed, and that's why I think these numbers can be looked at as the source of truth for real, genuine sentiment in the overall HEX markets right now. And we're also going to go one step farther, and we're going to take these global statistics and we're going to examine the rate of change of these global statistics. And if you want to go on your own and even go one step farther and examine the second derivative of the rate of change of these statistics, then you can do that and try to make your own conclusions if you want to, and try to do what you will with your own conclusion. But I'm just going to be walking you through some basic oversight of my interpretation and analysis of this data. What are the two very simple statistics? Well, you can see them on your Staker app. Go to gostaker.com if you don't have the app yet. It really does a good job of visualizing the stats and the health of the overall HEX network as a whole. So one of them, the very first one, is average weighted days staked. Now, this has to do with, again, the average days staked between every user, right? So this takes into consideration every single user's stake, whether it's a short-term stake or a long-term stake, and weights it by the amount in that stake. Therefore, a 1 million HEX stake for 15 years is weighted much higher than a 100 HEX stake for 15 years. Even though they're both 15-year stakes, it also takes into account the weight of the size of these stakes. And this is a really interesting stat because it communicates people's overall belief in the system in terms of time and putting their money where their mouth is. And I talk about this all the time. This is the stat that really tells it all. Now, we started off in August 1st of 2020. This is as far back as the data goes, back when it was first collected. We know that HEX is even older than this, right? So it would be interesting to get older data, but we have August 1st, 2020, all the way up till October 1st, 2021, which is today. And we can see that the overall HEX system started off with an average of 886 average weighted days staked, which means, it's a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years. And that means that the average person, if you picked one out of, let's say, 1,000 in a crowd, would have an average weighted stake length of 886 days. Obviously, you have hardcore believers on the other side and short-term speculators on the opposite side that maybe don't really care about staking and are just trying to trade or whatever. And we can see over the course of a year and 2 months, that number has done about a 1.6, 1.7x, and we're now sitting at a much higher average weighted day staked of 1,396 days staked. That is an average of 3.8 years. So we went from about 2.5 to 3.8. This drastic increase in the average weighted stake days length signifies to me that people are becoming more aware of the power of T-shares, the power of getting your stake in bigger and longer, because it's really a race for T-shares because the price of them goes up in HEX terms every single day. Now we can look at month over month. Was there, a positive up month in the rate of change of average weighted days staked, or was there negative? And you'll see here that for the majority of months, we've had a positive increase. And the negative increases aren't really that big compared to the positive increases. Now, I've highlighted these in green and red to help you visualize it more, but you can see the vast majority of these boxes here are in the positive realm. And this is indicated by this chart down here. You can see that the line stays above zero for much of its time. But look at the rate of change of this line, right? Let's examine the curvature of this graph itself. We can see, HEX started off near kind of zero, kind of not that much change for the first month, slightly above zero in rate of change, slightly below zero for month 2. And then it wicked all the way up to a very high rate of change. And in what month was this where the rate of change was so high for average weighted days staked? This was December 1st, 2020. Now, does anybody remember what happened on November 19th, 2020? Well, that was the big payday, right? So here, these 2 months right here, I believe, are visualizing the sentiment shift both before and after big payday, as a lot of short-term bandwagon speculators that tried to game the system were forced to come to terms with reality and realize the power of long-term thinking. They were forced to cope with the fact that the real winners of big payday were the long-term holders, who got as much of a 3x on their principal base HEX, as opposed to the short-term guys, which still got 30%-ish for free, but nowhere near as much as the long-term guys. So you can see in month 12, December of 2020, you can almost visually see by this massive positive rate of change a shift in sentiment where people said to themselves, oh, wait, I fucked up the big payday play. I'd better play the system right. So that was a slap to reality, I believe, for much of the system. And then we could see, a gradual tapering off, but still positive rate of change for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, for the next 7 months. But then, look at this, guys. Something interesting is happening in the August, September, October 2021. So the previous 3 months, we've actually had a slight downturn in the rate of change of average weighted days staked. And this is represented by the -15, -43. And then we had an inflection point in September, and we shifted back up to a positive slope in the rate of change in October. So this can almost be looked at as a shift in sentiment where people are starting to slowly signify a little bit of a shorter term outlook. And I believe this is due to pulse chain and a few other things, which we'll get into at the conclusion at the end of this video. But this -43 month means that in September, so last month, the overall average weighted days staked per user dropped by about 43 days, a little over a month. Now, again, this might be due to the pulse chain launch and people trying to anticipate some kind of, system gaming, or just wanting to hold liquid HEX to get liquid HEX on pulse chain as well. But again, it also could be just merely the fact that many people are priced out of the system on the Ethereum blockchain, and Ethereum fees are so bad that a lot of people might be saying, to hell with these fees. If staking is going to take a couple $100s out of my account, and all I have is a couple $100, maybe I'm not even going to make that stake in general, and I'll just wait until the pulse chain. So these two reasons could be valid reasons. But you'll notice that we seem to have reached a local low in the rate of change on that month. And so far in October, the average weighted days staked is coming almost back up to a rate of change of 0. Only -5 days so far, right? So again, the story that this data tells me is that we had a little dip in sentiment in the long-term thinking of folks when a lot of probably bandwagon speculators came on for the pulse chain hype. But the fact that we're trending upwards is very, very cool to me, because it also signifies that those bandwagon fans that hopped on for the pulse chain, buy the rumor, sell the news, or whatever they thought was going on, that sentiment is starting to shift back to almost the 0 mark in terms of average weighted days staked. And once we get positive again, I believe as long as this line is positive, that's a very, very bullish condition, extremely bullish, in fact, for HEX. Now, it's bullish in general that this number increases every month, right? Almost every month. So that's very bullish in general. But the rate of change being positive is even another bullish signal on top of that, if that makes sense, because that means that the average weighted days staked are not only increasing, but they're increasing at a faster rate every month. Cool? So if you can understand that, you can understand the very same concept with the second really critical data point that I don't think a lot of people have been talking about, the unique stakers rate of change. Now, unique stakers is a critical metric because it really identifies the believers in the system. Now, having a new HEX holder is one thing, but we all know that people can make multiple wallets, and not every HEX holder is a HEX staker. A HEX staker is in what's called the staker class, which is a much more powerful class in the HEX ecosystem because they are the ones holding up the price. So the staker class are the ones that vow not to sell HEX, right? So these are much more important than holders to me. Stakers are much more important than holders because they hold up the price and they keep the system going with the proof of weight system that was embedded into the trustless smart contract. Now, we started off on the oldest data point we have in August of last year at 16,600 unique stakers. And we've done over 4x that in just over a year. So this month, we're sitting at 66,000 unique stakers. So a 1.7x in this metric and over 4x in the unique stakers metric. Now, this is very interesting, right? Obviously, these numbers going up in general, we know is a bullish condition. And as long as these numbers are going up and not down, that is a bullish condition in my mind for the HEX environment. But again, let's look at the rate of change of this. Let's see when, the month over month rate of change of unique stakers was the highest and when it was the lowest. And we can see here again, I've done some conditional formatting to try to show you which months were more positive than other months in terms of rate of change of unique stakers. And almost every single month was positive, minus this 1 month right here. And again, that was the month following Big Payday, right? So in this month following Big Payday, what we can assume happened is a lot of these short-term stakers were wiped out, taken off the table. Maybe they took their small little profits and just ran away because they didn't bother to understand the system. So you can see the month before, we had a giant increase of 10,000 unique stakers, and about half of those stakers, about 5,000 of them, essentially dropped out of the system the month after. And to me, those 5,000 people were just short-term plebs that essentially wrecked themselves and didn't bother to look into the system. But that means that the other 5,000 did survive and did go on to be long-term stakers, right? We could see this in the chart plotted over here. The rate of change reached a local maxima at around September of last year and a local minima at around December of last year. But it's much more important to note that the absolute value of the local minima is only half of the absolute value of the local maxima there. So overall, that can be looked at as a bullish thing too. And then we had a gradual increase as people caught on to the system. In these months right here, I don't know if you guys remember, but the price was relatively stable. And meanwhile, the rate of change of unique stakers was going up the whole time. So people were actually catching on to the system during this time. And there's a lot of back and forth, action, a lot of sideways action, a lot of money being transferred from the hands of the impatient to the hands of the patient. And those hands of the patient were catching on clearly because this number was going up every month. Every month we had new unique stakers, and every month we had more unique stakers than the previous month. And this happened for almost a straight year, guys, almost a straight year. Now we're not even done with October yet, so we're going to see what happens at the end of October, but it would be really cool if this number just continued to go up, and it'd be kind of hard to top 13,000. We're already at 830. So I mean, debatably, these rates of change are even more bullish than the average weights of change of average weighted days staked. So these are two really cool things to look at, and you can even overlay them on top of each other and see what was happening at what time. You can notice that even though there's a little dip in average weighted days staked here in September, there's also a maxima of the rate of change of unique stakers. So there's more unique stakers than there ever have been before. There's a bigger number of unique stakers last month than there ever was before in 1 month. Meanwhile, they were staking for less time. Now, why this imbalance here? Well, again, I think that's easily explained by the narrative of pulse chain. So why is the rate of change of staked days inverse of new unique stakers as of late, as of specifically September and October? Well, again, users are priced out of Ethereum right now. A lot of people find it's not even worth it to make these stakes because the stakes that are there, because they're working with lower dollar amounts, and they're essentially priced out of the system due to gas fees. And then there's another group of users, probably an overlapping group, that are just anticipating the Pulse chain launch and either trying to buy the rumor, sell the news, or simply waiting for Pulse chain to come out so they can do their massive staking ladder that they want to do for a matter of pennies instead of hundreds of dollars. After September, we're clearly starting to see a shift in trend back in favor of longer stakes rather than shorter stakes. And meanwhile, at the same time, as there was a slight dip in average weighted stake length, there was a maximum of average unique stakers month over month. So this is a very cool graph to lay over each other to kind of look at them side by side. And I'm hoping that this data could be public. I think there's ways to do it on GraphQL. And I believe people more technical than me might be able to gather this data in a much more reliable way. But I just wanted to show you guys these unique data points and let you draw your own conclusions. So if you can find some conclusions in this data that I didn't really portray, or if you can develop some kind of narrative that I'm not seeing here, I'd love to know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and I will see you on the next video.